She drove to the forbidden ruins at dawn, wearing a dress the colour of blood, drawn by a nightmare she couldn't shake. The fog parted like a curtain, and a man made of blue mist stepped through, a man who'd been dead for 400 years. He looked at her with centuries of grief and spoke a name that wasn't hers, but her soul remembered. The smell of smoke didn't come from the fireplace. It came from inside Calla Conway's own lungs, a memory of ash that wasn't hers. She woke gasping at 4:47 a.m., sheets soaked with sweat that smelled like burning wood. The nightmare was always the same, heat licking up her legs, rope cutting her wrists, crowds screaming witch while someone she loved watched from the shadows, unable to save her. It always ended with her reaching toward blue eyes in the smoke, screaming a name she could never quite remember. The migraines had plagued her whole life. Therapists diagnosed anxiety. Neurologists found nothing. But lately, the episodes were getting worse, more vivid, more real. Sitting in her darkened apartment with rain drumming against the windows, Calla made a decision that defied every rational bone in her historian's body. She was going to the ruins. The Weeping Gallows, where Elara had been burned at the stake in 1624 for loving a vampire. Calla had written 3 papers on the execution, documented every crumbling beam. The church had declared it cursed ground, forbidden to visitors. She didn't care. The vintage red velvet dress fit like it had been made for this moment. The drive took 40 minutes through impossible fog. The ruins appeared like a photograph developing in reverse. Grey stone walls, choked with ivy, rotting wooden beams, and the blackened execution stake preserved as a monument to justice. Calla reached out to touch a rotting beam, needing something solid to ground her. The moment her fingers made contact, the air turned ice cold. Blue particles of light coalesced before her like stars falling upward, weaving into the shape of a man. Black hair, a face carved from elegance and sorrow, eyes the colour of winter storms that looked at her with 400 years of grief. Elara. The name exploded behind Calla's eyes. Suddenly she wasn't standing in the ruins, she was burning in them. "My name is Calla," she whispered. "Your soul remembers." He extended a trembling, translucent hand. "I am Casimir Lockmoor, and I have been searching for you across 4 centuries. Every rational instinct screamed run, but that deeper thing, the part that woke screaming from nightmares of burning, reached back. Their fingers touched. The world shattered. Heat and memory crashed through her in fragmented flashes, dancing in candlelight, kissing in shadow, promising forever, being dragged to the stake while he screamed her name, unable to save her because the sun was rising. The connection sent a shockwave rippling outward. Windows rattled in the distant town. Dogs howled. Somewhere in a monastery that shouldn't exist, Father Silas opened his ancient eyes and smiled. "She's awakened," he whispered. "Prepare the stake. This time we finish what we started." Calla's hand remained frozen against the rotting beam, splinters digging into her palm as Casimir's form solidified before her. He wasn't quite real, not in the way living things were real. His edges shimmered like heat waves in reverse, and when he moved, blue light trailed behind him like watercolour bleeding across wet paper. "You don't remember me?" It wasn't a question. His voice carried an accent she couldn't place, something older than modern English, shaped by centuries she couldn't fathom. "Of course you don't. The veil takes everything when it separates us. Memory, recognition, everything except the longing." "I'm a historian," Calla said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I deal in facts, not whatever this is, hallucinations, stress-induced psychosis. carbon monoxide from my apartment's faulty heating. You drove 40 minutes through fog to visit forbidden ruins at dawn wearing a dress the colour of blood. Casimir's smile was sad, ancient. Does that sound like the behaviour of someone who believes in facts alone? He had a point. Calla's rational mind scrambled for explanations: sleep deprivation, undiagnosed neurological conditions, a psychotic break triggered by her obsessive research into a 400-year-old execution. But none of those explanations accounted for the cold radiating from his spectral form, or the way the fog moved around him like it was alive, or the crushing certainty in her chest that she knew those winter storm eyes. "The nightmares," she whispered. "The burning. That was real." "You were Elara Ashwood, a hedge witch who protected this village from things that hunted in darkness. You saved my life when I was newly turned, starving out of my mind with bloodlust. You taught me to be more than a monster." Casimir's form flickered, struggling to maintain cohesion. "And when they discovered what you'd done, loved a vampire, sheltered an abomination, they burned you at the stake. I was forced to watch from the shadows as the sun rose. By the time I could move, you were ash." The migraine building behind Calla's eyes wasn't pain anymore. It was pressure, like a dam about to burst. Images flickered at the edges of her vision. A candle-lit cottage, hands mixing herbs, a man stumbling through her door, his eyes wild with hunger, and instead of fear, she'd felt. "I don't want this," Calla said, backing away. "I don't want to remember burning alive. I don't want to be some reincarnated witch. I have a dissertation to finish, a life. Run if you must." Casimir didn't follow, just stood there looking heartbroken and eternal. "But the memories are waking whether you accept them or not, and my return has alerted those who killed you the first time." His eyes blazed brighter. "The Ash Order has been waiting 400 years for you to reincarnate. The moment we touched, they felt it. They're coming, Elara, and this time they won't wait for a trial." As if summoned by his words, Calla heard it, the distant sound of engines, multiple vehicles approaching on the access road, their headlights cutting through the fog like knives. "We need to leave. Now." Casimir reached for her hand, and Calla saw real fear in his ancient face. "There's someone who can help us. A friend, if we can reach him before—" The first vehicle crested the hill. Black SUV, no license plates, windows tinted dark as sin. 3 more followed. Calla looked at the ghost who claimed to be her dead lover, at the ruins where she'd supposedly burned, at the approaching vehicles filled with people who wanted to finish a 400-year-old execution. Her rational mind screamed that none of this was possible, but her soul, the part that remembered burning, grabbed Casimir's translucent hand and ran. The moment their fingers intertwined, his form solidified just enough to pull her into the fog. They vanished into blue mist as the first car door slammed open behind them, and men in ash-grey robes emerged, carrying silver chains and sanctified fire. The world dissolved into blue mist and vertigo. Casimir pulled Calla through the fog like they were swimming through frozen water, his grip the only solid thing in a universe gone liquid. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except hold on as reality bent around them. Then they were falling. Calla hit solid ground hard, her knees buckling against polished hardwood. The red velvet dress pooled around her like spilled wine. She gasped for air that tasted like ozone and old books, her vision swimming as she tried to focus on her surroundings. They were inside. A warehouse, maybe, or a converted loft. Exposed brick walls, industrial windows covered with blackout curtains, furniture that looked expensive and unlived in. Casimir collapsed beside her, his form flickering violently now, barely maintaining coherence. "What did you do?" Calla's voice came out raw. "How did we—" "Shadow walking. I pulled us through the veil." Casimir's breathing was laboured, which seemed wrong for someone who shouldn't need to breathe at all. "But I'm not strong enough yet, not fully anchored to this plane. The crossing drained me." Before Calla could respond, a door at the far end of the loft slammed open. A man strode through, and unlike Casimir's ethereal presence, this one was aggressively, dangerously solid. Tall, lean, with silver-blonde hair pulled back in a way that should have looked pretentious, but instead looked predatory. His eyes were amber, not metaphorically, actually amber like a wolf's, and currently blazing with fury. "You absolute idiot!" The newcomer's accent was crisp, British, furious. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The entire Order felt that. Every single one of their sanctified alarms just went off. Simultaneously, you might as well have sent up a flare saying, 'Here's the reincarnated witch. Come finish the job.'" "Calen," Casimir started. 400 years, Casimir. 400 years you've been trapped in the spirit realm, and the second you find her, you immediately put her in mortal danger." Calen turned those wolf eyes on Calla, and she felt assessed, catalogued and found wanting in about 3 seconds. She's mortal, fragile. Her brain isn't designed to handle past life memories at this intensity. The trauma could kill her before the Order even gets the chance. "I'm right here," Calla said, her voice sharper than intended, "and I'd appreciate not being discussed like I'm glass about to shatter." "You are glass about to shatter." Calen crouched to her eye level, and up close she could see he wasn't human either. Too still, too perfect, too other. The memories of burning alive are locked in your subconscious for a reason. Your mind is protecting you. But Casimir's presence is breaking down those barriers. In about 6 hours, maybe less, you're going to remember everything. The pain, the fear, the sensation of your flesh charring while you screamed for help that never came. And when that happens, your brain will interpret it as happening now. You'll go into shock, possibly cardiac arrest. Calla's migraine pulsed in agreement. Already the pressure was building, images bleeding through, rope cutting her wrists, smoke choking her lungs, heat so intense She gasped, clutching her head. The pain spiked white hot behind her eyes. "Calla!" Casimir reached for her, but Calen shoved him back. "Don't touch her, you're making it worse." Calen's voice gentled slightly. "Listen to me. I can help, but you need to trust me. There's a way to slow the memories, give your mind time to adjust. But it requires blood magic, and it requires consent. Say yes or say no, but decide quickly because you've got about 30 seconds before you pass out." "Why should I trust you?" Calla gasped through the pain. "Because unlike my romantic idiot friend over there, I actually want to keep you alive." Calen's smile was sharp. "Also because the alternative is waking up in an Ash Order cell. And trust me, their methods of preventing reincarnation are significantly less pleasant than mine." The migraine exploded. Calla felt herself falling, felt Casimir's anguished cry, felt nothing but heat and smoke and burning, burning, burning. "Yes," she gasped, and then the darkness took her. When Calla woke, she was on a leather couch with a blanket tucked around her shoulders and an ice pack pressed to her forehead. Calen sat in a chair across from her, reading a book that looked older than most countries. Casimir hovered near the windows, his form more stable now, watching her with naked relief. "Welcome back," Calen said without looking up from his book. "You've been out for 3 hours. The spell is holding, which means your memories will return gradually instead of all at once. You're welcome." Calla sat up slowly, testing her body for damage. The migraine had receded to a dull throb. Her hands shook, but she was alive. Whole. "The Ash Order," she said. "How long before they find us?" Caelan finally looked up, and his expression was grim. "They already know we're in the city. Finding this specific location, I'd give it 48 hours, maybe less if they're motivated. Then we need answers." Calla looked at Casimir, at this impossible ghost who claimed to have loved her across centuries. "You said I was a witch, that I protected you. I need to know everything, who I was, what I could do, and why they're so desperate to make sure I stay dead." Casimir and Caelan exchanged a look. "There's a place," Casimir said quietly. "A crypt beneath the old church. I've kept it sealed for 400 years, waiting for you to return. Inside are portraits, journals, proof of everything we were. Then that's where we go." Calla stood, the red dress wrinkled, but still somehow fitting the moment. "Because if I'm going to die for this a second time, I'm damn well going to understand why." The crypt entrance was hidden beneath a condemned church on the edge of town, the kind of place urban explorers photographed for Instagram before the floor collapsed beneath them. Caelan picked the rusted padlock with casual efficiency while Casimir flickered in and out of visibility, his spectral form struggling in proximity to consecrated ground. "This is a terrible idea," Caelan muttered, shoving open the wooden door. Stairs descended into absolute darkness. Breaking into a church crypt with a half-solid ghost and a reincarnated witch who doesn't remember she's a reincarnated witch. What could possibly go wrong? "Your objection is noted," Calla said, already descending. The stone steps were slick with centuries of moisture, moss growing in the cracks. The air smelled like earth and something older. Rot, maybe, or just time itself decomposing. Casimir's glow provided the only light, casting blue shadows that danced across walls carved with Latin warnings. Calla recognised some of the phrases from her research. "Here lie the forsaken. Here darkness dwells. Turn back." "Cheerful," she said. "The church wanted to ensure no one disturbed what I'd hidden." Casimir's voice echoed strangely in the enclosed space. "They assumed it was demonic. They weren't entirely wrong." The crypt opened into a chamber that stole Calla's breath, not from beauty, but from recognition so visceral it felt like a punch to the chest. Stone walls lined with shelves holding leather-bound journals, a wooden table still set with dried herbs in clay bowls, candles that hadn't been lit in 400 years, and on the far wall, a portrait. Calla walked toward it like a woman in a trance. The painting showed a young woman in a green dress, dark hair loose around her shoulders, holding a sprig of rosemary. Her face was Calla's face, not similar, not reminiscent, but identical, down to the small scar above her left eyebrow that Calla had gotten falling off a bike at age 7. Except the scar was there in the painting too, which meant... "It's not possible," Calla whispered. "You fell from a horse when you were 6, Casimir said quietly, standing beside her now, his form reflected in the portrait's aged varnish. "Broke your arm. Your mother said the scar made you look fierce." The migraine flared, but this time Calla didn't fight it. She let the memory come. A brown mare, her name was Marigold, and the way the ground rushed up so fast and Mamma pressing cloth to the wound while tisking about careless daughters. No. Calla backed away from the portrait, from the impossible reality it represented. "This is insane. Reincarnation isn't real. Past lives aren't real. I'm a historian. I deal in evidence and documentation, and you're terrified." Caelan's voice cut through her spiral. He stood near the table, holding one of the journals, his expression uncharacteristically gentle. "Not of the memories, of what remembering means. What it means is that I died screaming, Calla said, her voice breaking. What it means is that somewhere in my subconscious I remember being burned alive. What it means is that this time I know it's coming. It also means you survived. Casimir moved closer, careful not to touch her. Your soul survived 400 years of separation to find its way back. That's not weakness, Elara. Calla. That's strength beyond imagining. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm drowning in someone else's life. Then let me show you who that someone was. Kaelin opened the journal, turned it toward her. The handwriting was familiar, Calla's handwriting, but rounder, less hurried. Read. Calla looked at the page. The entry was dated April 1624, 3 months before the execution. Casimir asked today if I'm afraid. Of course I'm afraid. The village whispers. Father Silas watches my cottage with eyes full of righteous murder. But I would burn 1,000 times before I'd let them destroy what we've built. He thinks he's the monster. He doesn't understand that I'm the dangerous one. I'm the witch who would set the world on fire to keep him safe. The words hit like a key turning in a lock. Calla felt something shift deep in her chest, a door opening that had been sealed for centuries. Not memories flooding back, but recognition, understanding. She hadn't been a victim, she'd been a woman who chose love, knowing exactly what it would cost. The Order, Calla said, looking up at Casimir. They didn't just kill me because I loved a vampire. They killed me because I was protecting you, because I was powerful enough to be a threat. Yes, Casimir said, and they're coming back to finish it because they think I'll protect you again. Yes, Calla closed the journal carefully. Her hands had stopped shaking. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something else was waking up. Something that remembered how to fight. Then we need to make sure that when they come, I'm ready. She looked at Kaelin. You said I was powerful. What could I do? Kaelin's smile was sharp and approving. You could command fire, bend it to your will. The irony of them burning you at the stake is that you were probably the only person in that village who couldn't be killed by flame. Could have been useful information 400 years ago, Calla said dryly. You'd suppressed your power to protect the village, Casimir explained. You thought if you were harmless, they'd leave you alone. By the time you realized they'd kill you anyway, you were already bound to the stake. Stupid, Calla muttered. Human, Casimir corrected gently. Above them, somewhere in the church, a door slammed open. Footsteps echoed across the sanctuary floor. Multiple footsteps, heavy boots, the jingle of chains. Kaelin's eyes flashed amber. They found us faster than I thought. Calla looked at the portrait one more time, at Elara's face, her face wearing an expression of absolute certainty. Then she turned toward the stairs where the footsteps were descending. Good, she said, and meant it. I have questions. Let's see if they're willing to provide answers before I remember how to burn them alive. The footsteps stopped at the top of the crypt stairs. Then a voice echoed down, smooth as poisoned honey. Casimir Lockmoor, 4 centuries is a long time to hold a grudge. Yet here we are. A figure descended into the blue glow of the crypt, tall, gaunt, wearing ash-grey robes that seemed to drink the light. His face was ageless in the worst way, preserved by something unnatural. And you've brought her back to us. How considerate. Father Silas. Casimir's form blazed brighter, solid fury replacing his usual flicker. Still pretending that alchemy and dark magic make you holy? Still pretending that abomination and love are the same thing? Silas reached the bottom step, flanked by 2 younger men in matching robes. His eyes found Calla, and his smile was a wound. Hello, Elara. Welcome home. My name is Calla Conway. She stepped forward despite Kaelin's warning, hand on her arm. And I'm fairly certain breaking into a church crypt to threaten people isn't standard clergy behaviour." "She has your fire," Silas chuckled, a sound like bones rattling in a box. "Even before she remembers. Remarkable." He pulled something from his robes, a vial filled with grey powder. "Ash from the original stake, consecrated, blessed, soaked in the prayers of the righteous for 400 years. He uncorked it, and the air in the crypt immediately felt thinner, colder. "Mixed with holy water, it becomes a binding agent. One drop on your skin, and the memories will stop trying to surface. You'll remain Calla Conway, ordinary historian, blissfully unaware of what you were, what you could be again. And, in exchange," Calla's voice was steady, but her heart hammered, "you leave, tonight. Change your name, abandon your research, forget this place exists." Silas's eyes were colourless, empty. "The vampire fades back into the spirit realm where he belongs. The natural order remains intact. Everyone lives." "Except she doesn't live," Kaelin snarled. "She exists, half a person, never knowing why she dreams of burning, never understanding the hole in her soul." "Better a hole than a pyre." Silas took a step closer to Calla. "I was there, child. I watched Elara burn. I heard her screams. The smell of charring flesh haunted me for decades." His voice dropped. "I'm offering you mercy. Take it." Calla looked at the vial of ash, at this man who'd orchestrated her death once and was offering her a lobotomy now. Then she looked at Casimir, at 4 centuries of grief carved into his spectral face, and at the journals lining the walls, proof of a love so fierce it had survived death itself. "No," she said. Silas's expression didn't change. "Then you choose burning. Again." "I choose remembering." Calla's hands clenched into fists. "Whatever Elara knew, whatever she could do, I want it back. All of it." "Even the pain?" "Especially the pain, because it's mine." Silas sighed, almost regretful, and gestured to his companions. They moved with inhuman speed, producing silver chains that gleamed with holy engravings. Kaelin lunged forward, but one of the men threw a vial that shattered at his feet. Salt and blessed water. Kaelin hissed, his vampire nature recoiling from the sanctified barrier. Casimir tried to intervene, but his spectral form passed through the attackers like smoke. He was too insubstantial, too weak from the shadow walking. He could only watch as they seized Calla's arms. "Don't touch her!" Casimir's roar shook the crypt, and for a moment his form solidified enough to grab one attacker's throat. But the effort cost him. His entire being flickered violently, nearly dissipating. Calla felt the cold bite of silver against her wrists as they bound her. The metal burned, which seemed impossible for ordinary chains. But then nothing about this was ordinary. "The memories are trying to surface," Silas observed, studying her face. "I can see it in your eyes. The recognition, the fear. But you're not strong enough yet, are you? Not without full recall. You're just a historian playing at being a witch." He was right. Calla could feel power somewhere deep inside her, locked behind centuries of forgetting. But she couldn't reach it, couldn't access whatever Elara had known. "The hunter's moon rises in 3 nights, Silas said, producing an ornate knife from his robes. "We'll perform the ritual properly this time. Bleed you first. Ensure the soul bond breaks before we burn the body. Casimir will fade. You'll cease to exist, and the aberration you represented will finally be cleansed from history." He pressed the knife to her palm, drew a thin line of blood. Calla gasped at the sharp pain, and then heat, sudden and overwhelming, flooding through her veins like liquid fire. The cut on her palm ignited with golden light. Silas jerked back, eyes wide. "Impossible! She can't access it yet. The memories haven't—" "But Calla wasn't accessing memories. She was accessing instinct, and her soul remembered what her mind had forgotten. This body had burned once, had felt agony beyond imagining, and somewhere in that trauma it had learned that fire couldn't hurt what was already ash and phoenix combined. The chains around her wrists glowed red hot, then white. They melted, dripping silver onto the stone floor. "Run!" Calla said to Casimir and Caelan, her voice strange in her own ears, layered, echoing with 400 years of rage. "Now!" Golden flames erupted from her hands, and Father Silas screamed. Caelan grabbed Calla's arm and yanked her toward the stairs before the flames could spread. Casimir's spectral form swept ahead of them, his blue glow cutting through the smoke now filling the crypt. Behind them, Father Silas shouted orders to his men, but his voice was drowned by the roar of fire consuming 400-year-old journals and ancient wood. "What did you do?" Caelan hauled her up the stone steps, 3 at a time. "I don't know." Calla's hands were still glowing faintly golden, heat radiating from her palms. It hurt, and then I was angry, and then..." Instinctive magic, Casimir materialized beside them as they burst through the crypt door into the abandoned church. "Your soul remembers even if your mind doesn't, but Calla, you need to control it before..." The church's main doors exploded inward. More ash-grey robes poured through, at least a dozen men carrying silver weapons and glass vials that sloshed with something luminescent. The reinforcements had arrived. "Out the back!" Caelan shoved Calla toward a side exit, but 2 order members cut them off, brandishing chains identical to the ones that had just melted off her wrists. Casimir tried to intercede, his form solidifying enough to grab one attacker, but the effort made him flicker dangerously. "I can't maintain this. The crossing drained too much. I'm barely here." "Then don't be here." Calla's voice came out steadier than she felt. She raised her hands, still tingling with residual heat, and faced the advancing order members. "Get back to Caelan's safe house. I'll handle this." "You don't know how to handle this," Caelan growled, fangs extending as he positioned himself between Calla and the nearest threat. "You've had powers for approximately 4 minutes. Then I'll learn fast." One of the order members threw a vial at her feet. It shattered and blessed salt scattered across the floor in a perfect circle, trapping her inside. Calla felt the barrier snap into place, not physical but metaphysical, pressing against her skin like invisible walls. "Binding circle," the man said, his voice cold. "Blessed by 12 bishops and sanctified in martyrs' blood. You're not going anywhere, witch." Calla looked down at the salt line, then at her still glowing hands. She remembered, no, Elara remembered this exact trap. They'd used it 400 years ago, had bound her while they built the pyre, while Casimir screamed her name from the shadows where sunlight kept him prisoner. "You used this on me before," Calla heard herself say, her voice layering with that strange echo again. "You learned nothing." She pressed her palm to the invisible barrier. It resisted, pushing back with holy force that should have repelled her magic. But fire didn't care about blessed salt or martyred blood. Fire consumed everything equally. The barrier ignited. Golden flames raced around the circle, burning away the salt, shattering the metaphysical walls. The order members fell back, shock replacing their confidence. "She shouldn't be able to do that," one whispered. "She couldn't before," another said. "Elara couldn't break binding circles. What is she?" Calla stepped through the gap she'd burned in their trap, and the answer rose from somewhere deep in her cellular memory. "I'm what happens when you burn a witch, and her soul refuses to stay dead." More vials shattered around her, holy water this time, mixed with something that stung where it touched her skin. Calla gasped, her concentration breaking. The flames flickering around her hands sputtered and died. Caelan lunged forward, grabbing 2 Order members and slamming them into the wall with vampire strength. The water is suppressing her magic. We need to move now. But they were surrounded. Order members blocked every exit, and more were pouring through the broken doors. Casimir's form was barely visible now, a faint blue shimmer struggling to maintain coherence. "Casimir!" Silas's voice echoed from the crypt entrance, smoke-damaged but triumphant. He emerged from the flames she'd started, his robes singed, but his expression exultant. "You cannot save her, not weakened as you are, not half dead in the spirit realm. You're a ghost clinging to a memory of love, and she's a broken reincarnation of a dead witch. This ends tonight." He pulled a different vial from his robes, not ash or holy water, but something that glowed red. Blood. "The hunter's moon may not be full yet, but we can improvise. Caelan Silver, step aside or be bound. Casimir Lockmoor, fade or be banished. And Elara Ashwood," he smiled, "burn." The Order members moved in perfect synchronization, throwing chains and salt and blessed water in a coordinated assault. Caelan fought 3 at once, his vampire speed keeping them at bay, but not winning. Casimir tried to solidify enough to help, but kept flickering out of existence. Calla felt the panic rising. She'd had power for exactly 4 minutes, and already it was failing her. Already she was overwhelmed, just like before. Just like when she'd burned the first time, helpless and screaming. Then she felt something else. Not memory, not instinct, but Casimir's presence, desperate and fierce, fighting to stay solid long enough to reach her. "Elara." His voice was fading. "I need you, not your power. You." And Calla understood. He didn't need a witch. He needed an anchor, something to tether him to this world, to give him substance enough to fight. She reached for him, ignoring the Order members closing in, ignoring Caelan's shout of warning. Her hand found Casimir's translucent fingers, and she poured everything she had into that connection. Not fire, not magic, just absolute certainty that she would not lose him again. Casimir gasped, his form blazed brilliant blue, solidifying completely for the first time since he'd crossed the veil. His eyes met hers, wide with shock and desperate hope. "Now," Calla said, "we fight together." His smile was savage and beautiful. Together. They moved as one, Calla's fire and Casimir's shadow, 400 years of separation burning away in the fury of their reunion. The Order members scattered before them like ash in wind. But through the smoke and chaos, Father Silas watched with ancient eyes and smiled, because everything was proceeding exactly as he'd planned. They escaped into the rain-soaked streets, Casimir's newly solid form stumbling beside Calla as Caelan covered their retreat. The Order didn't pursue, not yet. Silas simply stood in the church doorway watching them flee, his expression disturbingly satisfied for a man whose operation had just been torched. "Something's wrong," Caelan said as they reached his car 3 blocks away. "They let us go. Silas is a fanatic, but he's not stupid. Why wouldn't they? Because they got what they wanted." Casimir's voice was raw, his hand still gripping Calla's, like she might disappear if he let go. "They confirmed she can access the power. They know she's waking up." Calla collapsed into the back seat as Caelan gunned the engine, her entire body shaking from adrenaline crash. The fire had drained something vital from her, left her feeling hollow and scorched from the inside out. "What happens when I'm fully awake?" "You become what you were." Casimir turned to look at her, and in the passing streetlights his face was ancient and afraid. A witch powerful enough to challenge the Order directly. powerful enough to keep me anchored in this world permanently, and powerful enough to burn down anyone who tries to separate us again. That's what they want, isn't it?" Calla's voice was hoarse. "They're not trying to stop the awakening. They're accelerating it." Kaelin's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You can't possibly think. They need me at full power," Calla continued, the pieces falling into place with horrible clarity. "Because whatever ritual Silas is planning, it doesn't work on a partial reincarnation. He needs me to remember everything, to be everything Elara was. And then he kills you. Properly," Casimir finished, his voice dead. "Breaks the soul bond completely so you can't reincarnate again. 400 years he's extended his life waiting for this. He won't fail a second time." The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a building Calla didn't recognize. Caelan killed the engine and sat in the silence that followed, his jaw working like he was chewing glass. "There's something I haven't told you," he said finally, "about why the Order is so obsessed with preventing your reunion." "Caelan," Casimir warned, "she deserves to know." Caelan turned in his seat, his amber eyes finding Calla's. "You weren't just a hedge witch, Elara. You were a Flamebringer, the last of a bloodline that could command wildfire, could burn through holy wards and blessed silver. The Church hunted your kind to extinction because you were the only humans who could kill vampires and angels with equal ease. You were the balance, the thing that kept both sides honest." Calla felt her migraine spike. Images flooded through, a woman with her face standing in a burning field, flames dancing in her palms as armoured knights charged and fell to ash. A child learning to light candles with a thought, a teenage girl accidentally incinerating a barn when her first love broke her heart. "No," she whispered, pressing her palms to her temples. "That's too much. That's why they burned you." Caelan's voice was gentle but relentless. "Not because you loved a vampire. Because with your power and Casimir's immortality combined, you could have dismantled the Order, freed the supernatural community from their persecution, changed the entire balance of power. And they couldn't allow that." Casimir's hand found hers again. "So they made an example of you, showed the world what happened to Flamebringers who dared to love monsters." The migraine became a wildfire behind Calla's eyes. She saw it now, the real memory, not filtered through dreams, standing on the pyre, smoke already rising, and looking out at the crowd. Not afraid, furious, knowing she could burn through the ropes, could incinerate everyone there, could save herself. But Casimir was chained in the crowd where sunlight would destroy him if she caused chaos. They'd positioned him perfectly. Her choice, save herself and watch him burn in the sun, or die and hope his love was strong enough to find her again. She'd chosen him, had let the flames take her while staring into his eyes, pouring every ounce of her power into one final act, anchoring a piece of her soul to his so that someday, somehow, they'd find each other again. "I bound us," Calla's voice broke. 400 years ago, with my last breath, I tied my soul to yours so completely that the veil couldn't separate us forever." "Yes," Casimir whispered, "and Silas knows. He's always known. That's why he's still alive, still hunting. He's been waiting for the bond to pull us back together so he can break it permanently." "Yes." Calla looked at her hands, ordinary historian's hands that had held ancient fire, that had burned away binding circles and melted holy silver. Hands that remembered power her mind was only beginning to grasp. "Then we need to break him first." She met Casimir's eyes. "You said there's a crypt, journals, Elara's journals. If she knew this was coming, if she planned for it." She planned for everything, Casimir said softly, including the possibility that when you came back you'd need weapons the Order didn't know existed. Where? Kaelin asked. The original cottage, where we lived before they came for her? Casimir's expression turned grim. It's been sealed for 4 centuries, warded with magic that only a Flamebringer can break. If Elara left anything that can help us survive what's coming, it's there. Then that's where we go. Calla stood, her legs steadier now. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something else was burning. Not panic. Purpose. Kaelin studied her for a long moment, then nodded. The cottage is 3 hours north. We leave at dawn when the Order will be forced to rest. But Calla, his voice dropped, the more you remember, the faster your mind will try to relive the trauma. We're talking about recovered memories of being burned alive. Are you sure you can handle that? Calla thought about the choice Elara had made, pain and death over safety without love. Thought about 400 years of a soul refusing to rest until it found its way home. I don't have a choice, she said. The memories are coming whether I'm ready or not. I'd rather face them armed. Outside, thunder rumbled. The hunter's moon was 2 nights away, and somewhere in the ash-grey monastery, Father Silas prepared the pyre for the second burning of Elara Ashwood. The cottage stood in a forest that had reclaimed civilization, vines crawling up stone walls that should have crumbled centuries ago but remained impossibly intact. Calla felt the wards before she saw them, invisible threads of magic woven so tightly that even the air felt different here, charged and waiting. "I can't get closer," Kaelin said, stopping 20 feet from the door. "The wards recognize vampire blood. They'll rip me apart if I try." Casimir reached for the threshold and jerked back, his hand smoking faintly. "Same. Whatever Elara did, she keyed it only to herself." "To me," Calla corrected, stepping forward. The wards recognized her immediately, parting like a curtain pulled aside. She felt them brush against her skin, not hostile, but assessing, confirming. "Welcome home," they seemed to whisper. The door opened at her touch. Inside, time had stopped. A fire burned in the hearth despite 400 years of abandonment, flames frozen mid-flicker in an impossible stasis. Books lined the walls, their pages preserved perfectly. A table held teacups still steaming with phantom heat, and on the mantel a leather journal bound with a lock, shaped like a burning heart. Calla picked it up, and the lock opened beneath her fingers. The first page was dated the day before the execution, written in Elara's rushed handwriting, Calla's handwriting from another lifetime. "If you're reading this, then my gamble worked. You came back. You found Casimir. And now the Order is hunting you just like they hunted me. I'm sorry, I'd spare you this if I could, but some battles echo across lifetimes until someone finally wins. You need to know what I couldn't tell anyone, not even Casimir. The Flamebringer power isn't just about controlling fire. It's about becoming fire, transformation, rebirth. The reason they feared us wasn't because we could burn them. It's because we couldn't be destroyed. Kill a Flamebringer, and we rise from our own ash, stronger and angrier than before. I didn't rise after the stake because I chose not to. Because rising would have meant leaving Casimir behind, condemning him to eternity alone. So I poured my power into the soul bond instead, tying us together so tightly that death itself couldn't separate us permanently. But here's what Silas doesn't know. I left a piece of my power behind, dormant, waiting in the bloodline for the day I'd need it again. You're not just my reincarnation, Calla. You're my continuation. Every Flamebringer who came before me, Every ancestor who learned to dance with fire, they're all sleeping in your blood. And when you finally stop being afraid of burning, when you remember that phoenixes were never the victims of flame, that's when you'll become something the Order can't kill. The transformation will hurt. I'm not going to lie about that. You'll need to die to be reborn, and even knowing you'll come back doesn't make dying easier. But this time you won't be alone. This time Casimir will be there to catch you when you rise. Trust him, trust yourself, and burn everything that tries to keep you apart. Calla closed the journal, her hands trembling. I have to die. What? Casimir materialized in the doorway, his form solid enough now to look genuinely horrified. That's what Elara planned. I have to actually die and resurrect to access the full Flamebringer power. It's the only way to... The window exploded inward. Kalen came through first, thrown by inhuman strength, his body slamming into the far wall hard enough to crack stone. Order members poured through after him, but these weren't the zealots from the church. These moved with predatory grace, their eyes reflecting light like animals. Turned vampires, Casimir hissed. Silas is using turned vampires. Father Silas entered last, stepping carefully over the threshold. The wards tried to stop him, but he held up a vial of blood, Calla's blood taken when he'd cut her palm in the crypt, and the wards parted reluctantly. Did you really think I didn't know about this place? Silas smiled. I've had 400 years to prepare, Elara. 400 years to study your magic, to learn your secrets, to plan for every contingency. He gestured, and the turned vampires seized Casimir, chains of blessed silver appearing in their hands. Including how to neutralize your pet monster. Casimir fought, but there were 6 of them, and the silver burned where it touched. Within seconds he was bound, forced to his knees. Let him go, Calla's hands ignited golden flames racing up her arms. Or what? You'll burn us, Silas laughed. I'm counting on it. The ritual requires you to use your power to fully awaken the Flamebringer bloodline. You're doing exactly what I need you to do. One of the vampires produced a stake, not wood, but something darker carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Obsidian, blessed and cursed simultaneously. The soul bond anchor point is in his heart, Silas explained conversationally. Pierce it with sanctified obsidian and the bond breaks, not just for this lifetime, but retroactively. Every connection you've ever forged across every life will sever. He'll fade back to the spirit realm, and you, Silas's smile widened, you'll burn alone, just like you should have 400 years ago. The vampire raised the stake above Casimir's chest. Calla screamed and the cottage exploded into flame, but Silas had prepared for that too. Holy water rained from vials hidden in the ceiling, suppressing her fire, choking her power. She fell to her knees, gasping, watching helplessly as the stake descended toward Casimir's heart. No, she whispered. Casimir met her eyes across the burning room. I will find you again, he said, in every life, forever. The stake plunged down. Calla felt the bond shatter like glass in her chest, felt Casimir's presence rip away, felt 400 years of love tear apart in a single devastating moment. And then she felt nothing but rage. The flames that erupted from her weren't golden anymore. They were white, hot, phoenix fire, the kind of heat that didn't burn, it erased. The holy water evaporated instantly. The turned vampires screamed as their stolen immortality combusted, and Father Silas finally looked afraid. You can't, he gasped. You're not supposed to transform without dying first. The journal said. The journal lied. Calla rose, and her voice echoed with the power of every Flamebringer who'd ever lived. Did you really think Elara would leave the real instructions where you could find them? She burned, and this time the world burned with her. The white flames died as quickly as they'd ignited, leaving Calla gasping in the centre of a scorched cottage. The turned vampires were ash, the walls were blackened, and Father Silas was gone, escaped in the chaos, leaving only the smell of burned robes and ancient cowardice. Caelan pulled himself from the rubble, his vampire healing already closing the wounds. Calla! But she wasn't looking at him. She was staring at Casimir's body, sprawling on the floor with the obsidian stake buried in his chest. His eyes were open, empty. The winter storm grey faded to lifeless fog. His form was solid now, permanently, horribly solid in the way only death could make eternal beings. No. Calla fell beside him, her hands hovering over the stake, afraid to touch it, afraid to make it real. No, you don't get to leave. Not after 400 years, not after everything. Calla, Caelan's voice was gentle, the soul bond is broken. He's gone. Even if we remove the stake, he won't. Then I'll forge a new bond. Her hands closed around the obsidian, and even through the blessed carvings, she felt the wrongness of it, death and separation made solid. I bound us once. I can do it again. It doesn't work like that. The ritual Elara performed took months of preparation, specific lunar alignments, blood magic that... Calla ripped the stake from Casimir's chest. His body spasmed once, then went still. No breath. No pulse. No flicker of the blue light that had defined him since he'd crossed the veil. Casimir. She pressed her hands to the wound, trying to pour heat into him, trying to restart whatever vital force animated vampires. Come back, please. I just found you. You don't get to die protecting me. That's not how this ends. Nothing, just cold flesh and silence. Caelan knelt beside her. I'm sorry, truly, but he's mine. The words came out raw, primal, echoing with the same power that had turned the cottage into an inferno. And I don't accept this. She leaned down and kissed Casimir's cold lips, tasting death and rain and 400 years of waiting. And as she did, she felt it, that thing Elara had written about, the piece of power left dormant in the bloodline, the inheritance of every Flamebringer who'd learned that phoenixes don't just burn, they resurrect. If she could rise from ash, why couldn't he? Heat flooded through her, not the destructive white fire from before, but something older. Creation instead of destruction, the flame that sparked life instead of ending it. She poured it into Casimir through the kiss, through her hands pressed to his chest, through sheer desperate refusal to let death win. You said you'd find me in every life, she whispered against his mouth, so find me in this one. Right now. Come back. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Casimir gasped. His eyes flew open, not grey anymore, but burning gold, like captured sunlight. His chest heaved with unnecessary breath, and his hand shot up to grip Calla's arm with strength that felt fully, impossibly alive. Elara, he choked out. Calla, she corrected, but she was crying, laughing, pressing her forehead to his as he sat up. What did you do? His voice was rough, changed. When he looked at his hands, they were solid in a way they'd never been before, no flickering, no translucence, just real. I think, Calla tried to find words for the impossible, I think I gave you some of my fire, Flamebringer fire, the kind that brings things back instead of burning them away. He's not a vampire anymore, Caelan said, his voice filled with wonder and horror. His heartbeat, Calla, he has a heartbeat. Casimir pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the rhythm there for the first time in 400 years. I'm alive, actually alive. Impossible, Caelan breathed. Elara always did specialise in impossible. Casimir's smile was shaky but real as he cupped Calla's face. "You brought me back to life, literally. We're even now." Calla's tears wouldn't stop. "You searched 400 years for me. I pulled you out of death. We're—" A slow clap echoed from the doorway. Father Silas stood in the threshold, robes still smoking, but his expression was triumphant. Behind him, 24 more Order members filled the clearing, and in their midst, bound in silver chains that glowed with holy light, was Caelan's limp form. "When did you—" Calla started. "While you were busy playing Resurrection." Silas smiled. "Your vampire friend tried to protect you. Very noble, very stupid." He gestured, and the Order members dragged Caelan forward, forcing him to his knees. "Now, you have a choice, Flamebringer. Come with us willingly to the Weeping Gallows. Submit to the proper ritual, and Mr. Silver lives. Resist—" He pulled a vial of something that burned like liquid sunlight, and we discover how long it takes concentrated holy fire to reduce a vampire to ash. "Don't!" Caelan gasped, his face already blistering from proximity to the vial. "Let them kill me. Run!" 3 seconds, Silas said. "Choose." Calla looked at Casimir, newly alive, newly vulnerable, newly able to die for real this time. Looked at Caelan, who'd helped them despite everything, who'd become something like a friend. Looked at her hands, still glowing faintly with resurrection fire. "I choose option 3, she said, and raised her palms. "There is no option 3. "There is now." Calla smiled, and it was Elara's smile, fierce and feral, and done with running. "I go to the Weeping Gallows, but not as your prisoner." She looked Silas dead in the eyes. "As your executioner. You can't possibly— The Hunter's Moon rises tonight. You wanted me at full power for your ritual." The air around Calla began to shimmer with heat. "Congratulations, you're about to get exactly what you asked for." Casimir stood beside her, his newly beating heart steady and strong. "We end this tonight." We?" Silas laughed. "You're mortal now, Lockmoor. Fragile, human, one blade, and you bleed out just like anyone else." "Then I'll bleed." Casimir took Calla's hand. "But I'll bleed beside her. And if 400 years of death taught me anything, it's that love doesn't need immortality to be eternal." Silas's smile faded. He gestured sharply, and the Order members closed in, weapons drawn. But Calla and Casimir didn't run. They walked forward, hand in hand, toward the Weeping Gallows, where it had all begun, where, one way or another, it would finally end. The Weeping Gallows looked different under the Hunter's Moon, larger somehow, more real, as if 400 years of waiting had sharpened it into mythology made solid. The execution stake had been rebuilt, blackened wood replaced with fresh timber soaked in holy oil. The Order members formed a circle around it, their ash-grey robes swaying in the midnight wind. They bound Calla to the stake with iron chains this time, having learned from the melted silver. Casimir they forced to his knees 20 feet away, close enough to watch, too far to intervene. Caelan was chained beside him, barely conscious from the holy water burns covering his skin. "History repeats," Father Silas announced, raising his arms to the gathered brotherhood. 400 years ago we purged the Flamebringer corruption. Tonight we finish what our ancestors began. Tonight the soul bond breaks permanently, and the natural order is restored. Calla tested the chains. They held, blessed and reinforced, designed specifically to contain her. She could feel her power straining against them, white fire building in her chest. But Silas had prepared well. Holy symbols carved into every link suppressed her flames, kept them banked just below eruption. "Any last words, witch?" Silas approached with a torch, its flame reflecting in his colourless eyes. Calla looked past him to Casimir, to his newly mortal body forced to its knees, his winter storm eyes, now gold-touched from her fire, locked on hers with absolute devastation. "I love you," she said, not to Silas, to Casimir. "I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you in every lifetime after this, no matter how many times they try to burn us apart." "Elara," Casimir's voice broke. "Calla," she corrected gently. "I remember everything now, every lifetime, every separation, every reunion. But I'm still Calla, still me, still choosing you." Silas touched the torch to the pyre. Flames raced up the oil-soaked wood, and Calla felt heat licking at her legs, just like in the nightmares, just like in the memories. The smoke rose thick and choking. The order members chanted Latin prayers, and Casimir screamed her name, fighting against his chains with mortal strength that wasn't enough. The fire climbed higher. Calla felt it touch her skin, felt the pain spike white, hot and familiar. For a moment, one terrible moment, she was drowning in the memory, reliving 400 years of trauma, dying again. Then she remembered what Elara had written. When you finally stop being afraid of burning, when you remember that phoenixes were never the victims of flame, that's when you'll become something the Order can't kill. Calla stopped fighting the fire. Instead, she breathed it in. The flames didn't burn, they transformed. Pain became power. Heat became strength. And suddenly she understood what Flamebringers actually were. Not witches who commanded fire, but women who'd learned to become it. The chains melted, not from external heat, but from the fire radiating from inside her body as she transformed. Her skin didn't char. It glowed incandescent, as if her entire being was being reforged in living flame. "Impossible," Silas gasped, backing away. "You can't transform without dying first. The ritual requires—" "I did die," Calla's voice echoed with power as she stepped down from the burning pyre, flames trailing behind her like a cloak. 400 years ago, I died loving him, and I've been dying every lifetime since, remembering what I lost. You think burning me again would scare me?" She smiled, and it was terrible and beautiful. "Fire is where I was born. Fire is what I am." She raised her hands, and white flames erupted across the Weeping Gallows. Not wild, not destructive, controlled, surgical, burning away only what deserved to burn. The Order members' chains melted. Their holy symbols cracked and shattered. Their weapons turned to slag. Silas tried to run, but Calla was faster. She caught him by the robes, and where her hands touched, ash spread like infection. "You wanted to see a Flamebringer at full power." Her eyes burned gold white. "Here I am, the thing your Order has feared for 1,000 years, the balance you tried to destroy, the woman who refuses to stay dead." "Please," Silas gasped as ash crept up his arms. "I was only trying to protect. You were trying to control, to cage, to kill anything that didn't fit your definition of natural order." Calla leaned close. "Here's what's natural. Love. Transformation. Rising from ash stronger than before. That's the Order you should have protected. Instead, you burned it. And now—" She released him, and Father Silas crumbled to dust. 400 years of stolen life finally catching up in a single exhale. The remaining Order members fled into the forest. Calla let them go. She wasn't interested in vengeance anymore. She was interested in the mortal man struggling to his feet, freed from his chains, staring at her with wonder and fear and love, so fierce it burned brighter than any flame. "Casimir!" She walked toward him, and the fire trailing behind her dimmed, gentled, became something warm instead of destroying. "I'm still me." The fire didn't change that. He reached out slowly, touched her cheek where flames still danced beneath her skin. His mortal hand should have burned. Instead, the fire recognized him, welcomed him, wrapped around his fingers like greeting an old friend. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "You were always beautiful, but this, Elara, you're—" "Calla," she corrected for the last time. "Elara was who I was. Calla is who I am. And I think—" She took his hand, felt his very mortal, very real heartbeat through his palm. "I think I'm finally both. Finally whole." Caelan limped over, his burns already healing now that the holy chains were gone. "That was the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed, and I'm 400 years old," he paused. "Also, possibly the most magnificent. Remind me never to make you angry." Calla laughed, and the sound was lighter than it had been in 4 centuries, a lifetime, forever. "Can you get us out of here? I'm fairly certain the authorities will have questions about the spontaneous combustion." "Already called the car." Caelan's smile was sharp. "Though I should warn you, you're still glowing. Might want to dim that before we hit civilization." Calla looked down at herself. He was right. Her skin still radiated soft golden light, flames dancing just beneath the surface. She concentrated, pulling the fire back inside, banking it like coals in a hearth. The glow faded to something human passing. "Better?" she asked. "Perfect," Casimir said, and the way he looked at her, like she was every sunrise he'd missed in 400 years of darkness, made her wonder if perfect was finally, impossibly true. They left the Weeping Gallows behind, the pyre still burning but empty now, smoke rising into the hunter's moon like a prayer finally answered. The place where Elara had died, where Calla had been reborn, where love had refused to let death have the final word. 3 days later, Calla stood in Casimir's arms on the balcony of Caelan's safe house, watching the sun rise over the city. Casimir had never seen sunrise from this side, had spent 4 centuries in shadow and spirit, barred from daylight. Now, newly mortal, newly alive, he watched the dawn with the wonder of a man experiencing miracles for the first time. "Do you regret it?" Calla asked quietly. "Trading immortality for this? Being mortal again?" Casimir pulled her closer. "I was never alive when I was immortal. I was cursed, trapped, barely existing, but this—" He pressed his hand to his chest, felt his heart beating strong and real. "This is living, and I get to live it with you. That's worth every sunrise, every heartbeat, every mortal year I have left." "We," Calla corrected, "we get to live it, together." "Together," he agreed. And as the sun rose, Calla felt the fire beneath her skin settle into something sustainable, something eternal. Not the destructive blaze of transformation, but the steady warmth of a hearth that would burn for lifetimes. They had survived burning. They had survived separation. They had survived 400 years of death trying to keep them apart. Now, finally, they would learn what it meant to simply live. The end, sometimes love doesn't conquer death. It transforms it. If this story of a witch who refused to stay dead and the vampire who waited 4 centuries moved you, I'd love your support. Like and subscribe for more tales where fire meets forever.